Happy Friday. I'm happy to welcome you today to our Mobile Market Coalition May webinar, where we're going to be discussing regional mobile market networks. Super happy to have our friends from Fresh Approach in California, Ellen and Karima. We're going to lead the discussion today. So happy to have you guys. Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to share a couple of things. My name is Sam Lev. The community partner. My title is different now. I'm a coordinator for the Mobile Market Coalition. If you are new to this network, our Mobile Market Coalition is a national network of practitioners, researchers, funders, policymakers, all focused on advancing mobile markets as essential infrastructure for a responsive and resilient food system where everyone has access to healthy food. Presuming you came through one of our newsletter and or social media posts, so you're probably already familiar. If I have said already about the coalition, we are a burgeoning member network. And if you're wondering how you can become a member, I'd love to tell you. We are in the final throes of opening membership to kind of the broader public mobile market and mobile market stakeholder community. We're working on some administrative hurdles. Being connected to the University of Buffalo is lovely, but not without its occasional administrative slowness. So if you want to keep abreast of when we launch registration, it'll be hopefully in the next couple of weeks here. You can keep an eye on our monthly newsletter or our social media at Mobile Market Coalition. Website is mobilemarketcoalition.org, where you can check and also subscribe to our newsletter. We'll have pretty up-to-date announcements when membership goes live. It's an annual fee that I think is pretty affordable and gains you access to member-exclusive networking opportunities, member-exclusive resources, webinars, and discounts on the summit, and so much more that we'll be rolling out this summer. And so I hope you're as excited about this as I am. We're going to record this webinar. We are actively already recording it. I'll be sending it out. So if you have to jump off or if you want to send it to someone else afterwards, I'll be trying to send it out early next week. Our next scheduled webinar is Friday, June 14th, and we're going to be talking about vehicle design, innovations, and all kind of interesting things mobile market vehicles. I know that's an evergreen topic for folks, so excited to have a conversation, probably in a little bit different way than we had 2 years ago when we did a vehicles webinar. Last thing before we get started, or maybe I will go ahead and hand it off to Ellen. I have a little poll I'd love to put up so we can kind of set the scene about regional mobile market networks, just to kind of see where you are and what you're thinking about. So if you could answer that question once I put it up in about 20 or 30 seconds, that would be really helpful. But as I do that, I'm going to let Ellen and Karima take it away. Thank you both so much, and so happy to have you here.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. My name's Ellen. I will be doing the share screen feature. So just so you know, I will not see things pop up in the chat, but my counterpart, Karima, will be actively looking in the chat. So feel free to throw things in there or just to come off mute if questions arise. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
Thanks, Ellen. We'll just do like 15 more seconds on the poll, and then maybe you can take it off. And I can also keep an eye on the chat for y'all.
Awesome. That would be great. So just so you know you're in the right place, this is the webinar on regional mobile market networks, the what, the why, and the how. And Karima and I are both part of the California Mobile Farmers Market Coalition. So I will pass it off to Karima to introduce herself.
Did you want me to introduce myself first or do the agenda?
Introduce yourself.
Okay.
Hey, Ellen, we're just looking at your like PowerPoint right now.
I was looking at your slide.
Oh.
Your builder.
Let's see if I can do this again. How about now?
Yahtzee.
Fabulous.
Look, I'm wearing red too. Hi, I'm Karima. I'm with the Agricultural Institute of Marin, and I'm the senior mobile market manager there. We've been operating, I want to say, just about 7 years now, possibly 6. Yeah, that's me.
Fabulous.
Here is AIM's mission and the Rolling Roots mission. I know you guys can all see it, so I don't know if you want me to read it or not, but I definitely can. Okay. AIM's mission is to educate, inspire, and connect communities, responsible farmers and producers as part of a healthy, earth-friendly, equitable, local, and regional food system. And the Rolling Roots mission is to increase equitable access to fresh, healthy food grown on local farms and to provide nutrition education in underserved communities.
And I'm Ellen, so I work with Fresh Approach. I'm the Food Access Program Manager of our East Bay routes. So we do have a secondary office in the South Bay of the San Francisco area. And then shameless plug, I am also a network chair with the Mobile Market National Coalition. So if you're interested in joining one of the committees on the national level, holler at me. So Fresh Approach has been operating our mobile farmers market for quite some time. We actually have hit double digits. So this is our 11th year of being a mobile market in California, which is incredibly exciting. This is one of our vehicles, CC in the background at our Antioch route. So at Fresh Approach, we do try to do long-term change in local food systems at a variety of levels. In addition to our mobile farmers market, we have a community garden, we do nutrition classes, we do cooking classes, we do box programs, we do all kinds of things. But the mobile farmers market is definitely one of our cornerstone projects that we are so excited has continued for over a decade. So that is the knowledge that Karima and I are coming in with. And today we're just going to sort of go over regional networks, how to start them, what folks want to see from them. So Sam, if you want to do the answers to the poll just to see where folks are coming from, that'd be great. And then we can launch into our questions.
I'd be happy to. While I figure out how to actually share the responses in the Zoom apparatus. 8 responses, 3 of 8 said they're actively working with a regional network. 2 of 8 said they're working with others currently to start one. 1 of 8 said they are interested but not actively working on a regional mobile market network. And 2 folks are here saying, this is the first time I'm thinking about regional mobile market networks.
Awesome. Love that. Quite a variety. For the folks that said that they are actively working with a regional network, I'd love for someone to come off mute and maybe describe what that regional network looks like, how it came to be, and what the purpose is, if you feel confident. That would be awesome.
So, good afternoon or good morning, guys. My name is Amber Escobel, and I am from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I had recently became a manager of our Eat Well mobile markets. I have managed many different things, just never a grocery store on wheels. And our goal is to have everything locally sourced, providing that food security to, the areas that need it, the food deserts. We are not like metropolitan like California, Minneapolis. By no means we're Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We are the biggest city in South Dakota, so our state has never seen anything to this magnitude, filling the needs of our city. And this is the very first time I got your information about the coalition from Michelle Erpenbach. She is our president of Sioux Falls Thrive, and we are the pilot program to them. There's an advisory board that oversees most of the things that happen, other than managing the day-to-day stuff. That is me. I've been here for a month, and I just think it's so amazing that there's people like you who've been doing it for triple digits, even a year. It's definitely needed, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. We're happy to have you. Anyone else working in a state or regional network? Awesome. Great. Well, Karima and I work with the California Mobile Farmers Market Coalition. Like what was just mentioned, she and I are both in a more populous area of California. But because California is so big and it's such a diverse area. Our regional network is actually just a statewide network. So in different areas, it might look differently, multiple states, multiple regions. But for us, it made sense to be a statewide network because California is so specific in our permitting and regulations. We are one of 3 states who require certified farmers markets and things like that. So there was a need in our area for really specific TA that no one was providing, although there was amazing resources such as the University of Buffalo doing veggie van trainings and sort of the initial conversations and trainings needed to start your own mobile farmers market. There wasn't that California specific TA. So folks like AIM and Fresh Approach, we are pretty geographically close to each other. Karima's in an area that is sometimes called North Bay. So when AIM was first starting out, they actually sent a few folks to come to the San Francisco Bay Area to do ride-alongs with my boss.
That was
and
me.
It was Karima Harzal.
It was me.
I didn't realize it was you. My bad.
Yeah.
So Karima, when she first started, was able to do a couple of ride-alongs with our now food access director to sort of learn the ropes of starting the mobile market for AIM. That isn't always possible if you are the first in your area to do. So having something like a statewide or regional network where you can pull those sources of knowledge is extremely helpful. So this is sort of our statement of purpose with the very cute logo that my friend made. We are nonprofit organizations who operate or plan to operate a mobile farmers market program. So that could be different for different regions. You could just have active market members. It's totally up to you. But we wanted to create a space for operators to learn from each other, to share resources, to advocate for equitable solutions. So what does that mean for us in California? We have quite a few active members, but we have 5 different folks who are in the process of starting their own. So we meet quarterly, we share resources with each other, and we also do a bit of advocacy. So that is mostly with our WIC programming, which I will go into more later. But why have one? What are y'all thinking? What brought you here to this meeting? What are your hopes and dreams of having a regional network? Why are you here? What do you think it could mean for you? Any thoughts?
I can chime in real quick here.
Yeah,
I'm really
Max.
interested in kind of learning who else is operating in the region and if there's ways we can either collaborate on programs. Is there a way that we can kind of share resources, different sourcing, like how do we work together, do bigger buying? Just a lot of local ag here. So rather than us all individually dealing with these producers, how do we just kind of work as a team in some respects?
Fabulous. And Max, where are you calling in from?
Southeast PA.
Okay.
So outside Philadelphia.
Awesome. That is super exciting. Any other reasons why folks are calling in other than collaboration or resource sharing, which are both wonderful things?
I personally am just kind of looking to learn on what a regional network would look like in Kansas, and if this would be a way to sustain the LFPP grant that I'm a part of right now that's starting the mobile market, and to learn. And I miss all you cool people from the convening, so it's
We miss you too, Sheila.
off topic, but I love your hair. It makes me want to do that. I've been fighting the urge, so good for you.
Don't fight the urge. Commit. It's summer. It is the time.
I went through 5 mullets to be able to put my hair up in a ponytail. I don't know if I'm ready to do that again.
That's valid. Don't listen to me. That is very, very valid.
All right. Sorry.
We have. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were going to say anything else about hair. David in the chat said we'll be launching a mobile market this summer in Santa Fe, New Mexico, hoping to engage with others to learn. And Sheila, is that you again? Nope, another Sheila. I'm just generally interested in this effort. I currently work in the food insecurity space.
Fantastic. That's so exciting to see we're so spread out. Just like we are here in California. The little lemons showcase all of our orgs. So we do have a few in this hyper dense area of the Bay, very, very urban. But then we do have groups like in Chico or Davis and things like that, which are much more rural. So we have we started in 2022, have 5 active markets, 4 emerging markets, which is actually 5 now. We provide TA and training. We meet quarterly, like I mentioned. We do shared data. So we all of our active markets reply to a questionnaire quarterly. We've attempted to do funding together. So we go into grants together. Fresh Approach was able to secure $12,000 per active farmers markets in the state this year as part of a sub grant, which could be a reason that you're looking to do a regional network, especially if you're in an area that has very small funding opportunities and you're all vying for the same pot of funds. Sometimes it's easier to go in as a coalition or a group and divide it amongst yourself. And then advocacy as well. So here in California, like I mentioned, we have specific regulations such as having to be a certified farmers market and things like that. So we actually aren't able to accept WIC benefits on our mobile market vehicles, although we are able to accept EBT benefits. So right now the coalition is working to expand that so that trucks can at least accept the WIC FMNP summer checks. So we have that ability. Even the smaller groups such as Route 1 in Santa Barbara, or Lompoc, they only have a team of 3. So they don't have the ability to, take a day off and go to Sacramento to talk to legislators. But Fresh Approach does. So we can get their name on policies and show up for the group as a whole, which is super exciting. Karima, did you want to add anything? Oopsies. On the reasons behind having a network?
I just think it's really great to have a place even to just download everything that you're going through, the ups and the downs, and just having that like safe space where like people actually understand and you're not crazy. Like it's hard. It's hard, but totally worth it.
Yes, absolutely. It can be easy to sort of be a horse with blinders on, working in your programming, and, seeing nothing but obstacles in your way, but to be able to get on a call however frequently just to vent and get validated can be incredibly beneficial.
Real quick, Ellen, there was a question from David. What's the hang up with the WIC FMNP processing? Oh, sorry, Sam, you said talk about it at the end.
Oh, sure. I can talk about that at the end for sure.
Okay. Great.
I have so much to say on it, but it's probably not the most entertaining conversation for the bulk of the group. But yes, David, we shall chat. Great. So we're all here. We have a similar understanding of what a regional network is, similar feelings on why we should have one, but how to even get started? Great question. So like I mentioned, we started in 2022. It started as actually a pilot program. So the University of Buffalo, whoop whoop Sam, was able to secure some private funding from a foundation to help 4 organizations throughout California start a pilot mobile farmers market program. And Fresh Approach provided that TA for the, policy support, regulation support, and things of that nature, trying to build the truck such as that. So after that, it was, we sort of spoke to all of the organizations involved, and they found it very, very helpful to be able to talk not only to folks like Sam, who have such a wealth of knowledge on mobile markets in general, but to have that like state specific support, especially with our environmental health permits and things that a lot of hoops to jump through. So we realized that there could potentially be a need and desire to have continued support even after those markets were able to get started. So we also got an LFPP grant, Sheila. And that is a grant that is actually in the Agricultural Institute of Marin's name, so AIM with Karima. So she is going to be responsible for the videos that were going to be made for California specific training, which is super, super exciting. And then Fresh Approach was able to get a sub-award from AIM to sort of continue the conversation of a statewide network. So that is more my role to plan and facilitate those quarterly conversations, to do the planning meetings, to gather the data from other active markets. So we also were able to receive some federal funding for that. And additionally, we're able to get a couple of state funding programs. So California Department of Food and Ag, we were able to get, we being Fresh Approach, we're able to get a grant that allowed sub-grants for all of the active markets in exchange for providing their data points, which helps us in things like advocacy on state level, and in applying to other grants by having those data points. They're paid for those efforts, which is super, super exciting. So these are a couple of examples from private, federal, and state funding options to get that financial support, because it does take time, it does take energy to do the planning, and not all organizations have that wiggle room in their budgets to do so. So it is important to think about that, especially when you are trying to decide who is going to be in your network and how large the net is going to be cast. For example, say you're in Florida, if you might do a southern network and reach out to folks in Georgia or Alabama who are doing similar work. If there's not enough folks doing it in your own, or perhaps there's larger orgs with more of that funding that is unrestricted, that could have the time and capacity to do things that you and your own org are not able to. Any other thoughts on that, Karima? Okay, fabulous.
Ellen, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, and then Max dropped one in the chat that I'll ask too. I think I know the answer to this, but is the California Mobile Market Consortium a distinct entity, or based on the like who's getting the funding, it sounds like no, but can you talk a little bit about kind of where it sits in that world?
Sure. Originally we were called the consortium. Now we are the coalition.
Sorry, I didn't know.
Everyone hated that word, so we switched it, which is fine. To answer yes and no, it is technically its own thing. However, it's kind of also not. So I do feel, and Karima, not to speak for you, but it is kind of her and our baby. It is our little program that she and I definitely have attachment to and kind of feel ownership towards, because we were able to receive the joint funding to create it. That being said, the goal of it is to live on even past this LFPP grant. So as things roll on, we hope it to continue without Karima and I, should we move on to other things. Not that we ever will in it forever. But also it's difficult financially to start things and have them exist on their own. So even the coalition website is going to be a page on Fresh Approach's website, because it doesn't make sense to fund an entirely new website platform. So I think it will always have ties to Fresh Approach and the Agricultural Institute of Marin. But the goal is to have the ownership be shared throughout all of the organizations. But like I said, the funding for the back end admin is really only for Karima and I. So although other groups like Route One I mentioned are part of the planning groups and have facilitated a few meetings and things of that nature, they don't get reimbursed for their time spent. So yes
It
and no.
sounds, thanks. That answers the question. Yeah, thanks. Max, I think your second chat here asks to a similar question. Does the California Coalition have its own tax ID as an example? And it sounds like the answer is
No,
no, right?
no, we do not.
Do you all like do the two kind of lead organizations have any sort of agreement or MOU in place when it comes to funding and subawards and things like that?
Yes and no. Funding wise, yes. It is very clearly spelled out in the contracts within our grants and subgrants. But also because AIM and Fresh Approach have worked so closely together for about a decade, a lot of the MOUs are just sort of understandings.
And then to Max's next question, would it act as a fiscal sponsor for other mobile markets?
Yes, potentially. So like I mentioned, subawards to help people get started, or even Sam and I were able to chat about scholarships to bring some of the newer folks to the summit this year. So fiscal sponsor, yes, but very minimally at this point. The goal, however, would be to increase that. One of the ideas that we're working on now, we've gotten a couple of issues have arisen insurance wise, but one of the goals for Fresh Approach is to convert one of our older vehicles as a learning vehicle, so that if you're part of the coalition and you want to start with a mobile farmers market, you could rent out one of our older vehicles until you get the funding and ability to have your own truck, which would be huge because that's such a capital investment.
So cool.
But we are probably at least a year away, probably 2 years away from that, because we're building our new truck now. But that would be one of our goals, is to sort of be able to send an employee and a vehicle to a different group who's just starting out to do those trainings. Because a lot of the grants, they want you to show the need and the support in the community, but how do you show that without having a vehicle? So that's sort of our idea there. But yes, could potentially be lots of things. But I would love to help fund other orgs in a more meaningful way. Karima, I saw you come off mute.
I just said that that's an amazing idea because we're also getting our truck built and we're trying to figure out what we were going to do with our second truck. And that's a great additional idea.
Loaner vehicles.
Wow.
Definitely. So for example of limited funding, California has a state program called the Healthy Refrigeration Grant. So AIM and Crema were able to get a truck fully funded, but we do know that several other organizations within our state coalition did apply for that funding. Some of them got either partial or full awards, and some of them didn't. So it could potentially be one of those things where the group in San Luis Obispo didn't get the grant. So their program is sort of paused until they can find an additional way to get funded. Or maybe they could rent out an older truck from one of us. So things like that, it's great to sort of have those inside network options.
Ellen, can I ask one more question from the chat?
Absolutely, Sam. Bring it on.
Max would come in with the hot questions all day. He said, can you estimate how many hours it took to get the California Coalition started, and also maybe what are the ongoing time needs to keep it going?
Absolutely. So I'll answer the second part first. The quarterly meetings are an hour, so 4 hours throughout the year. The planning meetings we do once a month, so that's an additional hour. For half of the quarterly meetings, we do trainings, and the other half are more of like Q&A networky kind of sessions. So for the training ones, there is some time involved to pick the topics and make the trainings or find other people or organizations who can come in to do those trainings. So maybe like a couple of hours on that end. But honestly, it's not that time intensive to continue those programs. To get it started was definitely more time. I would say filling out the LFPP and working with AIM to sort of get that application set up was probably 5 to 10-ish hours, because we have in-house grant writers, so they were able to connect and work on that. So shared between us, probably closer to the 10 mark if you're counting both orgs. Doing the pilot program that led to the numbers and feedback that we utilized in that grant, I mean, was probably a year and a half of work between Sam and I. Not the full year and a half, obviously, but we would meet with pilot programmers like twice a month and be kind of on call for their emails and questions. So I don't know if that's a complete answer for you, but I would say quite a lot in upfront, but not so much once the ball gets rolling. But that is a great question. I can probably look back on my timesheets and see how many hours I claimed for the coalition programming. Because it does, I mean, there's a lot of like research that goes into trying to find all of the markets in California. AIM and Fresh Approach were already connected, as I mentioned. But there was like a group up north that we had never even heard of that was doing this as well for the last couple of years. So once you sort of start advertising and reaching out to folks, you definitely get more buy-in for sure. But I would say as long as you have at least 20 hours a year to commit, you could potentially have a regional network as well. Karima, how much time does this take for you?
Not that much, but I would like to say that you do a lot of the legwork and I kind of just show up. So
I think Sumden's being humble.
No.
Thanks. And I would say the national network has probably done a lot of the legwork for you, which leads me into my next question of how the national network can support you or your network. One of the first things I recommend you going to do is going to the network's website and looking on their fabulous little map, because they'll tell you where all the markets that they know of exist. So you can go in and sort of see who is near you geographically, which might help you to make those decisions on whether you want a state network, whether you want a regional network. So for example, there might just be like one in Arizona, but look right next door to New Mexico and you have a couple more folks. So maybe it's a regional network and not necessarily a state one. So things of that nature are super helpful and can be found And then reaching out to either Sam or myself. We have a lot of folks within our personal networks. So if you look here on these existing networks and you're like, I'm pretty close to Virginia, who would I contact? To reach out and tap into their network. And Sam and I would both say Alistair. So it's super, super important. And I definitely recommend, if you haven't already checked this interactive map out, that you check it out. Has anyone actually gone to sort of utilize this resource before? I would love to know. No? Great. Homework for everyone.
It zooms a lot better than this too, than the
It zooms so
screenshot.
much better. I'm sorry, this is a screenshot because I'm not
I want to
logically
share.
savvy enough to embed it in this
Oh, it's
Zoom.
great. No, of course. I want to share just briefly, both Ellen and I have been like connecting with these regional networks that are currently meeting, the burgeoning ones. And I think one of the goals as we talk about kind of how the national network can support these regional meetups is, what are the things that brought these folks together? And why are they meeting? What goals are they currently accomplishing? What could they do with more time, staff, capacity, money, and so on and so forth? And, there are not a ton of networks meeting currently, but they are pretty diverse and range from kind of information share, venting to, projects based around, specific funding sources, right? The North Shore folks have an FMPP grant that's really focused on using mobile farmers markets and mobile food pantries to support more local farms, right? So there's a big farmer training component to why they get together in the North Shore, and it's pretty like space limited, the smallest area out of all the regional networks. But just like kind of the reason California meets is because there are unique mechanisms within California that mobile markets have to consider. I think all of these networks currently are meeting for kind of came together for some of those specific reasons. David, really quickly, I just want to answer your question before we go back. It seems like most mobile markets are urban based. Do you know any that focus on peri-urban and rural? Yes, there are many and a growing number that serve areas outside of their rural communities. There are some that I know that are in the room with us today. I know there are some specific mechanisms that make rural mobile markets tick and make them challenging. It's probably a good idea for us to gather those folks together in a webinar sometime this year too, because there are more and more every year, it seems, serving rural communities.
Definitely. We have a few in California that are more rural based as well.
This is part of what, when we started thinking about regional networks and this idea within the coalition of supporting regional networks, I went through this whole practice of looking at this map and defining regions by like 2 or 3 state areas. And I was like, what is someone in Eastern Montana looking at this map going to have to do with Oregon, right? If that's one region. And it didn't make any sense to me to like predefine regions. And then I got to thinking, like, why does it, they don't even necessarily have to be like geographic regions too. They can also be kind of affinity special interest groups that we can support meeting. And I think a big one could be like rural markets and urban markets and how they might kind of meet and network differently. And that could be a broad-based kind of interest group among the coalition.
Absolutely. One of the things that sort of California, or so we thought specific, was the weather issues we face. So although our delightful weather provides us with year-round market and food availability, which is fantastic, we also deal with things like fires. But I actually had a group in New York reach out to me to see what our fire safety plans were when earlier they had some fires for the first time. So it doesn't, like Sam mentioned, doesn't necessarily need to be geographically linked issues, but it is something that could potentially be helpful. Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Any other questions popping up in the chat?
Just some great rural networking already.
Oh, fabulous. Near and dear to my heart. I'm originally from Mississippi. So rural is definitely something important to me. Perfect. Cool beans. So I will leave this slide up. If you have questions for Sam, myself, or Karima, feel free to take our information down. We are accessible to folks. And then I sort of wanted to open the floor for any questions for either Karima, myself, or to Sam that's come up for folks. And if not, I will circle back to the WIC thing. But if not, I'll just save the last like 3 minutes for that.
Yeah, I'll ask one. So at the national level, outside of like kind of connecting folks and finding resources like that, is there any kind of funding to support these other regional networks or resources? Trying to think like you guys have already done some of that legwork. Like what does the structure look like? What are some of these organizational documents potentially that you might be able to share? Like, is there any of that coming?
Definitely. I'm happy to share either our LFPP application that sort of laid out our plans of our network and the call for its importance. Happy to share that. The video pieces that I mentioned will be available hopefully in the next coming months. Those aren't active yet. But once they are, I'm definitely happy to share those pieces as well. And then we have for our coalition, we have a Google Drive is what we use, which shares all of our past trainings that we've done as a coalition, which I, again, happy to share out everything from like how to create a safety plan to community ambassador programs to truck questions, how to build them, what to think about when you're building them. So things like that, they're very, they exist. We don't really offer them publicly because we haven't been asked to, but that is definitely things that we're happy to share. I would say the national pieces aren't really created because this is sort of a newer idea just in the last few years. So those structures don't really exist. I mean, there's not even a definition of mobile farmers markets or mobile markets yet on a federal or state levels. So it's definitely an education piece when you're applying for funding, to sort of explain what you're doing and the importance of it, which continues to be an issue. But yes, again, happy to share what we've done.
I'll say to Ellen, before we get to a question in the chat, Max, the National Coalition has, like Ellen said, it's been operating off of an FMPP grant of its own. Who in the room does not have an FMPP grant? It sounds like. And there is a small amount of money within that to work with regional networks. We've been kind of in this learning mission to see who's operating and what the needs are, that amount of funding, and then also the resources that we can bring, the time and energy that the staff of the National Coalition, aka me, can bring, include a little bit of money that we're not quite sure how we're going to use in the remainder of this year, but also include, I think we're going to put out like a template for a local addendum to the Veggie Van toolkit. So we can't possibly, within the national scale of the toolkit, our toolkit, address everybody's unique needs in California, in Georgia, in Vermont, all the four corners, I guess, and in Oregon. But what we can do is kind of create a blank slate of all of the questions that might get asked of a mobile market, policy, regulatory, permit-wise, local food-wise, and all of those things, data-wise, and put those in a place where a regional network might be able to answer them for themselves and utilize that as a tool, for example, Ellen's emerging markets, to be able to kind of smooth the path by saying, like, here's all the questions you're going to want to ask. Here's the answers we have for them on where you go to get your food handler's permit if you need one, where to get your scales inspected if you need that, and so on and so forth. And so those are some of the things we're going to be putting out. Like I said, we love to be involved in those regional meetings just so we can keep a pulse on what the needs are and how we might be able to do things like expand out our technical assistance and our resources. Do we need to do a webinar on, am I hearing from different regions that everyone wants to talk about local food procurement, or everyone wants to talk about preparation for crisis management or something like that, right? And so as I hear more of those things, we can angle our internal resources or connect with our full network to provide the local specific trainings or kind of spin that stuff up to more national resources.
Also, Max, speaking of financial things, Fresh Approach is also a huge advocate for adding into your grant applications things you're already doing. For example, if your org is already receiving calls and requests, like Fresh Approach gets all the time, of people cold calling to be like, how do you start a mobile farmers market? Which is great. We love it. But we will add into most of our grants a piece for like, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? When you, my mind just went blank. The C word for when you help.
Consulting, coaching.
Consulting, thank you. Like consulting hours. Wow, sorry. It's been a long week already. Consulting hours into existing grants. So in addition to our LFPP, which sort of helps us fund the coalition, we can have admin time for answering those questions as they come up. Both
No, it's good you brought that up. Sheila in the chat was hoping you'd elaborate on that, and would grant reporting be a part of that? So I think that's a good question for y'all to connect with maybe after the fact, if Sheila, if you're interested in some of the Fresh Approach technical assistance. Do you guys do kind of that sort of contract work?
We do. We sure do. Both unofficially and officially. So I can share both. But yes, definitely hit me up. I'd love to talk more. Other questions? Thanks, Max. Appreciate you. Oh, Sam, was that the chat? In the chat?
The chat.
Yeah, perfect. Other questions for folks that come up?
I would say as we maybe head towards the formal part of this, and we can kind of do more Q&A, non-regional mobile market related. If you are interested in starting up a regional network, if you want to connect with others, please do reach out to me. I'm happy to be that connection point, happy to kind of turn the map into real life contacts. This is a part of what we do at the Mobile Market Coalition. And I'm happy to share kind of the ways other networks are meeting and how they coalesced in whatever ways would be most helpful to you. So don't hesitate to pop me an email if you want to dig more deeply into this for yourself, for your own region, or for a special interest group that you want to be a part of.
Love it. And then I don't remember if it was David or Max, I apologize. But so in California,
can I pause 1 second, Ellen?
Yes.
I'm going to pause really quickly. I want to just say, if anyone needs to jump off, if they're done with the regional part of this, I think this FMPP is a very important discussion. I'd recommend you stick around. I would love to just put up a poll really quickly to see how you enjoyed this webinar. And then if folks need to drop off at any point, they're welcome to. But thank you all for coming. Thank you for talking regional networks with us. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Garima.
Thanks, Sam. Just on those data points, I appreciate. So yes, the women, infant, and children, they have a summer program, which is national. So the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, which is a set of additional checks that folks can utilize at farmers markets. So as it stands now, only farmers are able to accept these checks. Because we are a mobile farmers market, we are technically a reseller because we purchase full price from farmers and then resell in areas that don't have the ability to have their own traditional markets. But California's coding is set up to protect farmers. So as it's currently written, they don't want third parties like Sam's Club or Costco to be able to accept these WIC benefit checks. So we're trying to add a definition for mobile farmers markets or certified mobile farmers markets within our California retail code, so that we can be distinguished and then utilize those fundings because the money is going to farmers because we're purchasing it directly from the farmers. So those checks would then cover the cost of those purchases that we make directly with farmers. But it's a very long haul. And I am so appreciative to the Agricultural Institute of Marin because they have an Andy. We both have Andys, but their Andy is much better versed in policy. So he was able to go with me to Sacramento to talk to the Assembly Members Committee on Health. So we were able to get it passed on the legislative level. It's already been passed through appropriations, so the funding piece of it. We have yet to go to Senate or get passed by Governor Newsom, but we're like halfway there and being able to accept those WIC FMMP benefits. One of the challenge, which is probably something that a few of you will face, is that WIC is a national program. So a lot of the issues that are coming is because state programming can't say something different than federal funding. So our issue now is to try to find that wiggle room where WIC on the state level is abiding by the federal regulations. But there are a few states who are allowing the acceptance of WIC benefits and WIC FMMP summer program benefits already. Some of them are just flying under the radar, cough, cough, because they're like the only one in the state doing it. So the state is like, eh. And some of them are going through the hoops of becoming WIC certified. So that means they are more of a mobile grocery store and they offer a variety of products, such as dairy and shelf-stable items. In California, our mobile farmers markets aren't all equipped to do the caveat of being a mobile grocery store. So we are trying to avoid having to adhere to all of the federal regulations, but still have that additional piece in our applications. Because right now it's, are you a brick and mortar or are you a farmer or are you a farmer's market? And we are neither of those. So we want to be to have the addition of mobile farmers market to the applications that we can then accept WIC benefits.
David, I want to just briefly add, thanks for all the clarification you were putting in the chat. If you are a part of the Google group, the Mobile Market Network Google group, there's been a great conversation just in the past couple of weeks about this. And one of my takeaways from those emails is a lot of the like flexibility within FMPP or within FMNP is really based on like who your advocates are at the state level and who's running the programs, right? And the senior on the WIC side, I think they can really easily die in the darkness without the right cheerleaders. And it sounded like in Virginia, they had found kind of some exemption language that allowed for a mobile market that was part grower, part reseller to accept FMNP checks because of like their nonprofit status, but also the other services that may or may not be in the areas they serve, right? Was kind of how I read that exemption language. Anyway, a plug to go check that out in the Google group. Send me a direct message if you're not a part of it, and I will add you to that Google group because it's really a helpful place for conversation. But I love this concept of FMNP going digital too. That sounds really neat.
Yeah, hopefully 2026 digital FMNP.
The mobile grocery, the one I know, David, is it's Food Link in Rochester. They're a food bank that has a few different mobile vehicles, and they have a specific bus that is WIC approved, right? So they carry all of the stocking units that any grocery store would be required to carry to be a WIC store. So it's effectively a rolling WIC store with the peanut butters and the cereals and all of those things. They did a presentation a couple of summits ago about it.
Yes, which is, if you have the capacity to do so, that's fabulous. For AIM and Fresh Approach, part of our mission is to have fresh fruits and vegetables. So having like baby formula on the vehicle is not something we prioritize. Is there a need for it? Absolutely. But it's not necessarily something that we are looking to provide. We do, however, combine our forces. So there are a few brick and mortar WIC stores. So both AIM, Fresh Approach, Center for Land-Based Learning have had routes in the past next to those brick and mortar WIC stores so that folks can get all of the staple items, but also the fruits and vegetables on the vehicle, because we do think it's super important to have well-balanced diets. But Fresh Approach, unlike AIM, does not have an actual cooler on our vehicle. So having things like yogurt and dairy is not possible on our vehicle, perhaps on our new one. Karima, do you want to say anything about the cooler, your truck, or?
I was just gonna say that our refrigeration has actually been broken for quite some time and is almost impossible to fix because originally our truck was built out in France, which makes fixing it almost impossible. So like we got the fridge fixed by some fridge people, and then they said there was something else wrong. So yeah, we haven't had refrigeration for quite some time. So
Which is
get your
also
truck
something
from
to
here.
think about. So like one, if you're getting your truck from somewhere, are they close enough that they can do maintenance? And two, oops, thumbs up. And two, if you are doing the route of mobile grocery store, and adhering to the WIC regulations to offer everything, that means that you have to always be able to offer everything. So if something happens to your refrigeration, you would have to address it quite quickly, or find some alternative means to be able to provide those entities. And I do see that it's 11, so shameless plug again, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Sam, for the opportunity, and we'll see you on June 14th. Yes, for
14th.
the vehicle fabrication webinar.
We'll be sending out, if you're already one of the kind of pre-members of the coalition, you can check the calendar in that dashboard and register, and then we'll be sending out the registration for that webinar here shortly. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Karima. And thanks, everybody, for joining.
Oh, Sheila,
you.
I'm sorry. I just saw your thing about the group communication. We do email. We have like a email